Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be making a peaches and cream cake from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. Now this is going to be a lot of work. There are a lot of steps. There's like 3/4 of a page, okay, maybe half of a page of ingredients in 3 separate columns, and then there's 2.5 full pages of instructions, and there are 4 different components. So it's probably going to be a while. I think we're going to end up putting this all together tomorrow. There's 6 layers to this cake, and I only have 3 pans, and 6 won't fit in my oven at once anyway, so yes, this is going to be a while. And the first step, we have to let sit for 2 hours before we can move on. And after this step, this component is used in like every other step afterwards. So do have to do this first. So I have my peaches. I went a little bit more than she called for, but not a lot, just because one of my peaches had a bad spot and I didn't know how much that was going to be. So I have peeled them. I think I showed you guys how to peel peaches when I made the peach jalapeno peach glaze for chicken. If I can find that, if that is true, I will put that up here so you can go see. It's really simple. Little X on the bottom, boil it for about 30 seconds in water, let it cool. Some people put it in an ice bath. I usually just let it cool because mostly my peaches are usually coming from the refrigerator, because once they get ripe, put them in the refrigerator and they'll stay good for a little bit longer. So then just let them cool. You can peel them pretty easily, and then you slice them into, she says, thin wedges. For me, the larger peaches got I cut the quarters into quarters, so that's 1/16. The smaller ones, I cut the quarters into thirds, so 12ths. Just whatever you like is fine. Some of these are gonna be pureed, so it doesn't matter that they're not all perfect, but you're gonna reserve some for decorating the cake and putting them on top. So you do want some to be pretty. And you'll want to do this relatively soon after you cut them because they will brown. So we have the peaches in a medium to large bowl. It's quite a lot of peaches. And we're gonna add some brown sugar, some lemon zest, finely grated, so I just used a microplane as usual, and some lemon juice. And it was about the same amount of lemon juice of lemons for juice and zest. So that was good here. It doesn't always work out that way, but, and that is it. Now we're gonna just stir this up. And so the goal here is for these peaches to give off a nice sweet syrup that we're going to use. And then we're going to puree the most of the pieces of peach. But you see how it's got lots of nice juice there at the bottom already. But we're going to cover this and let it sit at room temperature for 2 hours or up to overnight. Like I said, we want to get moving with this. We don't want to take forever. So we're going to go for the 2 hours. So probably give a little bit, but about 2 hours. We'll be back and show you what we have to do with these. So it's been a while. It's been more than 2 hours, but less than overnight. So the top peaches got a little brown, but that's okay. It's fine. We're gonna puree most of these, and I can pick out the ones that I want to keep to look pretty. So, but now what we need to do is to strain these. So I've got my usual strainer set over a measuring cup. I don't know that my strainer is gonna hold all of these peaches, but we're gonna do our level best to get these strained. All right, While this is straining, I'm gonna go ahead and pick out about a cup of the pretty ones to save for garnishing the, that one's not pretty. I'm gonna be really annoying about this, but to save for decorating the cake at the end. So I'm gonna pick them out, I'm gonna put them in here, and then I'm gonna put them in a container in the refrigerator, because at this point we'll definitely be finishing this cake tomorrow, not anytime today, because we still have one more component to make that needs to sit for at least 4 hours, but we're gonna let it sit overnight. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some more of these in here just to let those drain. And then maybe most of them will fit in there, or we can, I don't think it matters if I have some of the juice in these, because they're just gonna be pureed. So, all right, I'm gonna call that about a cup. These will go in the refrigerator overnight, just because I'm just trying to get as much of this liquid out as I can. So there we have the really pretty juices. Oh, we have almost enough without even adding any of this, but I've got some peach schnapps that have been in my cabinet for a really long time. And we're just gonna top it up. That was perfect. So that was almost exactly the right amount here. So that's awesome. Don't have to buy any more unless I need it for something else in the future. We don't use this very often. So now this is also gonna go into a container in the refrigerator separate from this, because we're not gonna use this again until tomorrow. Same with this. So let me get those taken care of and get my blender so that we can puree these up. So all of these peaches go into, I think, oh, she says a food processor or a blender. I'm just gonna use my blender. It's easier to clean. So I'm gonna put all of the juices and everything in there that I can scrape out. And we're going to just puree these. So I have a puree button. Just gonna hit that. Looks pretty good to me. She says this should yield about 2 cups. It looks like, if I can trust my measurements, I have way more than that. So we're good, we have plenty. I'm going to go ahead and put this in another container so it can go in the refrigerator, but we will need some of it for the next part of the recipe. So this is gonna be split throughout a couple of other things that we make to go into this cake, onto this cake, into this cake. So we're not using this all at one time, and we might have some left over, but we'll be right back to show you what else we need to do. So our next step is to make a pastry cream. So this is gonna be cooked on the stove. I'm not sure I'm gonna show you all of that because it takes a really long time. We'll see, but I'll describe the process for sure. First thing we're gonna do, have some cold water here, and I'm going to basically bloom some unflavored gelatin in it. So just sprinkle it on, and then I'm gonna stir it in, and we're gonna let it sit until we're ready for it. The gelatin will start absorbing the water. So we're just gonna set this over here, and I need a large bowl. Okay, now I'm ready. So I have to whisk together. We have eggs that are already at room temperature. They've been sitting out since I made the peaches ready. So I'm just going to, I don't need to separate these or anything. They're just whole eggs. All of the eggs in this recipe actually call for them to be at room temperature. We're gonna put in the sugar. This is just plain white granulated sugar. And this is some cornstarch. And now we need a whisk. All right, so I'm just gonna whisk this together. This is loud. He'll probably cut this part out. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside with my pad to keep it from moving, because I'm gonna be coming back to whisk that again later. So I have a vanilla bean that I'm supposed to split in half lengthwise. And then scrape out the seeds with the tip of a knife, which I'm sure you've seen people do before. There we go. Now I need a pan. So I have my saucier because we're going to be whisking things in this, and that's the easiest one to use. All right, it's clean, just looks bad. And pour in some whole milk. She does request whole milk in this part of this recipe. Whether it will work with a lower fat milk, I'm not sure. And we're going to add all of these seeds and the bean into this milk. My hands are, as usual, very clean because they've been washed about 1,000,000 times while I'm doing this. So there's that. And then we need just a little bit of salt. And I think that is it. Seeds, salt, and drop in the split pot. Okay. So right now we're going to bring this to a simmer over medium heat. That's going to take quite a while because my milk was cold. And as soon as bubbles form around the edge, then we're going to remove it from the heat and we'll be back to show you what we do. So right now, all we're doing is heating this up, and we'll be back. So now we're going to slowly stream this milk mixture into the eggs while we whisk. We're trying to temper the eggs and make sure they don't scramble. So that's good. And now we go back over to the stove. Let's see. So we're going to put this back into the pan. We're going to put the mixture back onto, I think, medium heat again, and we're going to cook it, stirring constantly with a spatula, a rubber spatula, until it thickens and begins to bubble. She says about 5 minutes. So I'm gonna need this whisk again. Let me put this over here. I've only spilled a little. So I'm just gonna put all of this in here. There's a little bit of the, not that, don't want that in there. There's a little bit of the, like the skin that milk forms. It'll be fine. Any of that sort of curdles and becomes solid, we are going to strain this later. So we should be fine with that. So I'm going to use this to stir this while we heat it over the stove, medium heat, I think, until it thickens and begins to bubble. And we'll be back. All right, so this has definitely started getting thick. It's a little clumpy, but we're going to be whisking it later. So it's really, really thick. It's not really bubbling and it's kind of lumpy. But I think I'm gonna call this done, because I think if I left it, it would probably go, yep, starting to bubble now. So we are done with this here, and we will meet you back over there to finish our pastry cream. Okay, so now we have finished cooking this, but we have several more things to do. Now we have, this is still hot, fresh from the stove, and we're going to whisk in some butter. We want to make sure all of cold butter, we want to make sure that all of the previous piece gets melted and whisked in before we whisk in the next piece. So I'm going to be doing that for a little while. There we go. This custard went from not really thick to, oh, it's thick in, it seemed like no time. So, okay, I think our butter is all melted. And so now we are supposed to take out our vanilla pod here. If I can get it out of my whisk. I don't think I need my whisk anymore. So hey, that's how I got it out of the, actually I might need the whisk again. I'm gonna need the whisk again. So I'll work on this in a second. But now we need to strain through a sieve into an even bigger bowl that I happen to have here. Add things. Goodness gracious. Okay. So we're going to strain this through this sieve into the bowl. I'll pick it up after I'm done. I think this sieve is big enough to hold this entire batch. So that's good. I'm just going to get everything out of here. Now, this will not necessarily go through all without pushing it, but we'll get as much through as we can. There we go. That's not bad. And you'll see we have a little bit of brown spots, which may have been slightly burned milk and may have been pieces of vanilla. I'm not even sure, but it doesn't matter because we strained it out. And now I'm going to be good about this and get a different one. Clean spatula just so we don't get any of the bits we were trying to strain out. So this is a nice custard base, and we're going to use the gelatin now that has absorbed all the water. We're going to put this in the microwave, or you can heat it on a small saucepan on the stove. I'm just going to heat it in the microwave for a few seconds, of course without the spoon, until it is melted. So after about 20 seconds, it is nice and melted, and we're going to whisk this in. I'm going to do it slowly. She doesn't say to, but I'm going to just kind of pour it in like I did the milk, just in case. Is good enough. There we go. All whisked in. And only one more step. The instructions that I'm seeing say a slightly different amount of the peach puree than the ingredient list, so I'm wondering where the disconnect is at this point. So just bear with me. The amount that she says in the ingredients is slightly more than the amount she says here, but with the rest, the other place where we use this peach puree, this amount that she has in the ingredients and the amount that it says here will form the amount that she said it was supposed to make. So I'm gonna go with the amount that's in the ingredient list. We'll see. Hopefully it will not be bad. So we're going to just stir in our peach puree. Are we supposed to whisk it in? Yeah, we're supposed to whisk it in. Okay. So we've got our peach puree we've already made and we're using for other things, but I measured out what I needed and now we're just gonna whisk that in. Okay, so now we're supposed to put this in the refrigerator with a piece of plastic wrap touching the top, at least 4 hours up to overnight. You want it to be chilled so that gelatin will help it set up. It should not be, I don't think, like Jell-O. It won't be that hard, but it should be enough so that the cakes won't make it all just immediately squish out the sides. That's, I think, the reason why we have both eggs, cornstarch, and the gelatin, to make it a little bit stiffer than a pastry cream that you're not going to be smushing in layers of cake. So I'm gonna put this into a container that will fit in my refrigerator, put plastic wrap directly on top of it, and we'll pick this up tomorrow, because now we've made exactly one of the final ingredients for our cake, and we have the actual cakes and the frosting to make tomorrow. So we'll see you tomorrow. So it's day 2 for our peaches and cream cake, and I will say she does warn you that this cake is a lot of work. So don't go into it thinking you're gonna just whip it up and be done. Today we're gonna make the chiffon cake first, because, as I said, 6 layers. We have to bake it in 6 separate pans. Well, 2 batches of 3, because I have only 3 pans the same size. So 2 batches, 3 cakes, and that's gonna take a while. So first, I'm gonna get my cakes going. She does say to make the other component before this, because it just cools on the counter. We'll have plenty of time to make that after this gets in the oven. So, speaking of which, it's preheated to 325 degrees. And we will have to line the bottoms of our cake pans with parchment. I will show you how I do that in a minute, but I want to get the cake ready first. So, and we are not greasing the pans. No grease, just parchment on the very bottom. We are going to, first we have to make basically a meringue. We have our eggs separated and at room temperature. And we need just the whites right now and a whisk attachment on our mixer. So there's that. And we're going to, we also need some lemon juice, which I have to turn back for the things I haven't measured yet. So, okay, need a little bit of lemon juice. There we go. And we're supposed to whisk these on low speed until they start to thicken. Starting to get some bubbles in it. I'm gonna call this good. And now we turn it to high, and we're gonna gradually add some of the sugar from this cake recipe, but not all of it. So for this, we're looking for glossy and medium peaks. We are starting to get glossy, but we're nowhere near peaks. So I think we are there. That looks good to me. We're definitely getting some peaks here. Take this off. It should. Yep, that is perfect. Now what I need to do is transfer this to another bowl, set it aside until we need it. Because we're going to use this bowl to put the rest of the cake together and then fold these in. All right, now we don't need to wash this bowl. Everything is going to be coming in together anyway, but we don't need our whisk attachment. Oh, we're supposed to sift this. So I'm going to take this out of here and just move it to the side a little bit so I can sift. So we need flour. So this is all of the flour in our recipe. I'm going to use this bowl again in a second. We need our baking powder, which I have to look up how much that is. So we're putting baking powder. This will provide some of the lift, but the the egg whites will provide some lift to the cake as well. Okay, so we're done with the baking powder. Need some salt. I'm just going to use this sea salt, fine sea salt that we have, because it's almost gone and I kind of want to get rid of it because I've bought a replacement. Oh, we need some nutmeg, fresh grated nutmeg. Pretty sure. Which I have already grated. There we go. And I think the sugar. Yep. And that is it. I'm going to go ahead and dump all of that in and then sift it through. I feel like a lot of my salt is left in there because it's not super fine. I'm just going to dump that through so we don't lose the salt. No lumps in the flour though. Okay, that's one part. And now I need to take my egg yolks. So we need the egg yolks, oil, which just vegetable oil, which I have already pre-measured, thankfully. What else? Milk and our extracts. I'm gonna go ahead and put our extracts in here. Pretty sure I remember, yes. So we have a little bit of vanilla extract. There we go. Some almond extract. This is going to be a very almond flavored cake. It is spilling. There we go. That's about right. Should be fine. And then milk. Now, because this is a very almond flavored cake, she says you can use almond milk, but I'm just using whole milk because that's what I have on hand. Whisk this together. Just mostly trying to get those egg yolks mixed up with the other ingredients here. Okay, so now I'm supposed to form a well in the center of my flour. And pour in the yolk mixture. It's gonna overflow my well, but that's all right. There we go. And now with my paddle attachment, we're supposed to beat this on low just until it's blended and smooth. So, and then we're going to turn it up to medium and beat it for 2 minutes. So, I think we're just about blended and smooth, but I'm gonna scrape down the sides before I turn it up to medium, just to be sure that I get sort of everything in there. And this is pretty thick at this point, but we're gonna add the egg whites to this, so that'll thin it out a bit. All right, been 2 minutes. It's nicely beaten, and it's actually seems a lot thinner now that it's all beaten up. There's air in it. So I'm gonna take my paddle attachment off, and I'm not gonna need this mixer anymore. So I'm gonna try and get that out of the way. So give me 1 second here. So now we are going to gently fold in the egg whites to this cake batter mixture. So she doesn't say to do it in batches, so I'm just gonna put the whole thing in there and fold. So in through the middle, up over the top. Turn in your bowl. I'm doing this to keep some of the air that is in the egg whites, but also get it mixed sort of thoroughly. So usually some streaks of white are still fine. I don't know about with this dough. She does not say that, but it says just gently fold them in. So I'm gonna try to get them mostly folded, not too much white. I'm gonna call that good. You can see mostly folded in. I'm gonna set this aside, and now I'm gonna prepare my pans. I've done this before, but I don't know which recipe you'll see first. So I know I can't get two 9-inch circles out of this paper. So I have 6 sheets. I'm gonna put them as close to a corner as I can. And I'm going to draw around as close to the bottom as I can. And I'm going to cut that out just all together. If one of them's a little too small or a little wonky, it'll be fine. So the biggest thing here, since we're doing so many, is to try to keep them all together. And go a little bit on the inside of your line, because obviously the inside of the pan is slightly smaller than the outside. So as I said, she does specifically tell you not to butter these tins. I am going to put a small dab of butter in the bottom underneath the parchment to keep the parchment from slipping around when I put the cake batter in, because I'm also going to have to swish it around or flatten it out, and so I don't want my parchment to move. And now these fit nicely. All right, yep, pretty good. And they won't move around. So now I have 6. And I'm going to have to bake these and then do this all again. Won't show you all of that because it's going to be just like this. But so she says to put a heaping cup or 7 ounces by weight. I'm going to go by weight just because it's much easier, especially when you are baking in 2 different batches. So I'm hoping that this is approximately that whole weight, and we'll be okay if we do it this way. So, all right, so put my pan on, turn it on, set it to ounces, make sure we're zeroed, and no, almost. We're slightly over 7, but that should be good. And then we need to tilt and rotate this pan until it covers the whole thing. Now these are going to be very thin layers, but that is great because it means you do not have to slice it to get a 6-layer cake. Quite often what people will do is just make a normal layer and then slice it in half, or like thirds, which is really much more difficult, but and that's how you get those super thin layer cakes. Instead of baking them like this, they bake them whole and then slice them. Anyway, I'm gonna keep doing this, and then I'm going to bake them until they are golden brown on top, 30 to 35 minutes. And she says the tops should spring back without leaving a fingerprint when gently pressed in the center. So that is what I'm going to do with this batch. And then when these come out, we're going to put new parchment in, which is why I have another parchment. Put new parchment in and do it all again. So, okay, so this is what it looks like right after I take it out of the oven. This one was on top the whole time, and then these ones you can kind of see one side is slightly less brown. They were on the bottom shelf and I did not move them around, so I'll probably move them around next time, but I cooked them for about 30 minutes. And now we have to turn them upside down onto a cooling rack in the pan until they are completely cool. So I won't be cooking the other batch for a while. But we'll be right back to show you the last component of this cake. Okay, so we've made everything for our recipe today, our peach cake, peaches and cream cake, except for the peach caramel, which is what serves as sort of the frosting, icing, glaze on this cake. So that's what we're going to do now. This is a caramel, and I haven't used this method for caramel. I've made caramel before, but I haven't used this method for caramel before. So in here I have just plain sugar and water measured as per the recipe. And now I need to, I'm going to stir this together a little bit. I guess just so it's not totally separate, but it won't completely dissolve right now, but we'll get it all stirred up. I'm going to scrape down the sides a little bit. You really don't want there to be too many crystals on the sides, but we will later be using a pastry brush with some cold water to moisten the sides and make sure it does not form crystals. But we're going to cover this and cook it over high heat for 4 minutes. So I guess I'm gonna go as high as mine will go, and I'm gonna set a timer for 4 minutes. And we'll see you in 4 minutes. Okay, 4 minutes, almost. My stove started making a weird sound and it kind of worried me, but everything's fine, but it's starting to smell like caramel. So I'm gonna put this away. Shush. And this is supposed to take 10 minutes, and we're not supposed to stir this at this point, but this looks like it is gonna be deep amber much sooner. All right, I'm gonna, oh yeah, that is deep amber. I'm gonna turn it off because this will go from deep amber to burnt in in no time, and I needed my cold butter, which is going to make it, cut it down and keep it from completely burning. So hopefully it's not burnt at this point. I'm whisking in cold butter, and this bubbling furiously is entirely to be expected. And now that the butter is fully in there, I'm gonna add some cream and it will bubble just like that. Again, whisk it in. and whisk in some fresh nutmeg and some salt. And there is our caramel sauce, but now we need to make it a peach caramel sauce. So I think I'm done with whisking, and I just, nope, not done with whisking. Now I need to pour in my peach and whisk it in. Make sure I get all of that in there. This is our peach puree that we made already and used for the pastry cream. So there we have it. I am hoping this is not going to be too burnt. It's very, very hot. Do not put your finger in this. Do not. This has been sitting on the plate for a while, so. It's very close to burnt. But we will taste it when it gets a little cooler and see if I need to redo this, because obviously high on my stove was way too high. I do have a little bit more of this peach puree left, so if I need to do it again, I can. I do need, however, to put this in a clean bowl. And it will thicken as it cools, but we want it to be at room temperature. So, we'll be back to see if that actually doesn't taste burnt. This has been a while, but we are finally ready to start the assembly of our peaches and cream cake. So these are completely cool and they've been upside down, but you can see they did not fall out. What we need to do at this point is take like a butter knife and run it around the edge of the cake. And then it should pretty easily come out when you turn it over. So there we go. And then all we have to do is take off the parchment. So there we go. So I'm gonna do that with the rest of these, and these are the second batch of cakes that I baked. We went and found our nice cake plate just for you guys, and I'm going to put this on top of here. I don't think it's gonna move around too much, especially once we get everything on here. So the first thing we have to do to this cake is to brush some of our peach syrup on it. This was the juice from the peaches, and we added some of the peach schnapps to this. So I'm gonna measure it out just to make sure I'm trying to make sure I get enough on there. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, obviously, but she gives an amount. So I measured out that amount, and I need a plate or something. So now I'm gonna try to paint this on, and she says on the tops. So I'm gonna be putting these tops up. I'm trying to get as much of this to soak in as possible. Now she does not have this in the assembly step. She says to do it after they have cooled. And then once all of them are cooled, then do this and then assemble it. But I was a little afraid of what was gonna happen if I tried to move these after they were soaked. And so I assume this is the best method here. To go ahead and let it get it done right before we put the rest together. So there we go. That is good enough. That's almost all of it. And now we have our pastry cream that we made that has a little bit of the, quite a bit of the peach puree in it. And we put cling film, plastic wrap, whatever, on top to keep it from getting a skin, because it will form a skin. So, and this is directly from the refrigerator, so I'm going to measure this out as well as I can. It's a pretty stiff pastry cream, but you know, it's going to be on this cake and have tons of layers over it, and I have this to help me out a little bit. So, and she again has a measurement for this. I hope there's enough to put all of that in there, but see? We just spread this as best we can over the layer, which is why I tried to spread it out when I put it on. This is not super spreadable, but I think if it were a little warmer, it probably would be a little better, because, you know, cold from the refrigerator is always stiffer. Up here. Now this is a very rustic looking cake when she makes it, so I don't feel bad if it looks a little less than perfect, but I think that will be fine for this layer. And now I'm going to put this layer on here and try to do the same thing. Now this part is done, and I need to now cover this in plastic wrap and put it in my refrigerator for 6 hours and up to overnight, which I had neglected to read until very recently. So we'll be back in maybe 6 hours, maybe more like 3 or 4. We'll see. Okay. Full disclosure, I had to make the caramel again. So this is the first batch that I made, and it doesn't look too bad, but it tastes a little bit bitter, a little bit burnt, because it went a little over. And I didn't have quite enough of my peach puree to make it again, so I pureed an extra peach with a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of brown sugar, and I made it again. I may have pulled this one a little too soon, trying not to make it go too far. So this is a much lighter caramel than this one, but this one tastes much more of peach than this one. This one is a little overwhelmingly caramel, whereas this one is definitely more peach. So we're gonna use this one. And we're gonna decide if we can use this one for anything or not. We'll see. So, final step is to pour the caramel, the peach caramel sauce that we made, over our chilled cake. It's been about 5 hours. We waited until after dinner and everything, and now we're gonna keep this because I'm sure we are not gonna be able to eat all of this, and hopefully it will keep okay in the refrigerator. But all we have to do now is just pour this over our cake and let it fall down the sides. And I'm gonna try not to put way too much on because I don't want it to fall all over my countertops. So I do want it to go over the edges, but I don't want it to completely overflow my cake stand. So, and I did not puree this one quite as well as I did the first batch. Yep. It does have a little lip there, thankfully. So I do have a few little pieces of peach in there, but that is perfectly fine. Let's see. I'm about to overflow, of course. Of course, I did exactly what I did not want to do, but there we go. See how jiggly it was. Now, the only thing we have left to do is to put some of our peaches. I did also put a piece of plastic wrap over top of this to try to keep them from going to brown. They went a little brown, but that's all right. We'll put down the brown ones mostly first. We're just going to sort of pile these on top to decorate. That's all that these are for. And have a little bit more of a peach bite. Not quite as beautiful when you've done them the day before because they do brown pretty badly, but that's two. Now, I don't know how well this will keep. There were no instructions about that. But we won't be able to eat all of this. In fact, we'll probably eat a very small portion. I think she says this makes 12 to 18, feeds 12 to 18 people. So 12 to 18 portions, that's a lot. But this is it. This is the cake. And we'll let you know in a minute what we think of it. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make the peaches and cream cake from Deep Run Roots, Vivian Howard's first cookbook. And I have to say, we really loved this cake. It was a very light cake. The chiffon cake was very light. I think it was cooked perfectly, given the instructions. I didn't have to bake it sort of extra or less. It was nicely baked. It was light, and it was really easy to eat a large piece of this cake. So that's a good thing. Maybe, maybe not, depending on your whether you want to eat a large piece of cake or not. But the cake itself was sort of had an almond heavy flavor, which goes well with peaches, so that was okay. And I felt that the bites that I had that had the peach slices from the top were the best, sort of provided a nice tang from the fresh peaches that I didn't get as much from the items that had the peach puree in them. That was more sweet, less tangy, but the pieces of peach still had that bite that fresh peaches have. And speaking of that, I really think, so when you make the peaches in the very beginning that you then keep some of to garnish, for me, I made that early in the day before. And so, and I was done with the cake sort of late the next day. And by then, my peaches had sort of browned a little bit on the outside. I don't think you would be amiss to just cut up some fresh peaches when you serve it or when you make it, just to put on top, as long as they're fresh and, ripe enough. Those would be just fine. I don't think they have to be the marinated ones. I think it would be delicious and be prettier with the non-brown peaches. I tried my best not to, for those not to go brown. I put plastic wrap over them and everything, and they still kind of went brown. So The caramel, the directions didn't work for me. It went way too fast on high heat on my stove. So I did have to remake it. And I think at that time I went a little bit too light. Honestly, I'd run out of sugar. I ran out of white sugar, and so I used a little bit of turbinado sugar, which made it harder to judge when it was the right color brown, in my opinion. So that's on me. But I think the second time I didn't do it quite enough, and so it was a little bit looser. It was much more, it had much more of the peach flavor when the caramel was not as burnt. Well, not burnt, but didn't go as far. It wasn't as dark. So I think somewhere in the middle would be good, where you get a little bit of the caramel flavor, but you still get some peach. So next time I make this, and I probably will make it again, even though it was quite a lot of work, because we really did like it. I will probably try to balance those two, where we get a little bit of caramelization, but not too much. Did have a problem with the directions for the amount of the cream, the pastry cream, to put in between the layers. There was not enough for the amount that she said to put in between each layer. So I would go much lighter on that. Personally, you probably should just divide it into the number of layers. I think it would be 5. So you want to divide what you have in fifths and just use that. And I think that it could be streamlined into a little bit more. I don't think you needed to completely chill that pastry cream. Because there's gelatin in it, it gets a little more difficult to spread when it's completely chilled. But I do understand you don't want it to completely smoosh out when you put the next layer on top. So that's kind of a balancing act. It was okay, and it did eventually spread pretty well. And honestly, even though I put way less on the top 2 layers than the bottom layer, maybe the bottom 2 layers, it wasn't as difficult. It wasn't as much of a stark contrast between the layers. So I think less would be perfectly fine. But it was a really delicious pastry cream. So all in all, we really loved it. It is a lot of work. But if you have fresh peaches and you're going to be having a bunch of people over to eat it up, it did last in the refrigerator for a while. We kept ours in the refrigerator for a few days and sort of ate on it, 8 pieces every night until it was gone. And we did share some with some friends. But if you're having, a big gathering and you want to sort of have an impressive peach dessert, this is a great one. So definitely would make it again. I would make a few changes probably, but other than that, we really liked it. And if you love peaches, you should probably try it. If you liked watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.